And welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Kimberley Hoeppner, and today is March 6th, 2018. In just a moment, we're going to be on to your aviation, marine, and public forecasts. But remember, you can always get our forecasts if you like the information hotline, 1-800-472-0391, or you can simply go to our webpage by typing in weather.gov/Alaska. If you ever have any questions about the show, you can direct them to our television lead, Dave Snider, at david.snider@noaa.gov. Now let's start with the interesting topics of the day, as we have some very active weather across the West Coast. We have a large area here highlighted in red. These are for winter storm warnings, and they're starting on the early morning hours Wednesday and generally running through the day on Wednesday. We're expecting higher snow amounts with this system that's going to be coming across for Wednesday, and that's going to be between 4 to 8 inches on average, with locally higher amounts between 12 to 16 inches. Also expect blowing snow conditions to reduce visibilities in these areas down to 1/2 mile or less at times. The area highlighted in in yellow is a winter weather advisory for snow, and the lower snow amounts in this area are going to range between 2 to 5 inches, with localized higher amounts up to 6 to 7 inches. Now let's take a look over at the southeast, because there's conditions that we're concerned about for these areas. Highlighted in yellow, we're looking at least winter weather advisories to possibly updating to winter storm warnings in some of these locations. Looking at snow amounts between 4 to 8 inches, as we have a low pressure setting up in the northern Gulf. So let's take a look at the storm systems that are bringing the weather in our directions. Now, the low pressure system is kind of centered out here across the northern Bering, very cold air mass coming across the north of the Pribilof Islands there and racing on inland. Now, the surface low is set up with this low pressure system, and we'll get to those surface maps in just a moment. One other thing to note is that we have a large plume of moisture across the southern Bering, and this is going to be advecting across to the northern areas of the Gulf, helping those storms out a little bit further to the east. Right now, the concentration, though, for the western coast is going to be on the low pressure sitting out in the Bering, and then the other low pressure system, we have a stream of moisture with a surface feature going to help provide some lift as we head into the day tomorrow. So let's put this into motion. There's a little bit of a break before the next storm system moves in. So fairly quiet conditions, some snow showers out there during the afternoon hours, but there were some breaks for the most part across much of the eastern Gulf. Just shower activity up through Yakutat, and then drier conditions across the southern areas of the Gulf. We do see some light snow showers forming from the southwest across a little trough axis that extends to the Kenai, so some light snow reported out there in Kenai this afternoon. Otherwise, the central, interior, and west coast is experiencing light snow already beginning with low pressure that passed on through earlier today. So across the northern coast, a little bit drier in those locations, however, staying on the cool side. Now across to the Bering, we're seeing some light rain showers. The ridging that's just sitting to the south of the chain has brought a warmer air mass into the mid-30s to lower 40s across much of the western Alaska Peninsula out through the central Aleutians. Behind this system, the low pressure system out across the northern Bering has another trough axis that's extending down towards the western Aleutians. Now let's put this into motion for tonight. That cold air mass that you saw earlier is going to be advecting inland, and that's going to be bringing an axis of cold air into the west coastal areas. So this is going to help initiate a lot of the snow that's going to begin during the overnight hours. Now across the Bering, mainly just a strong westerly flow across the area between 30 to 50 miles per hour. And then low pressure is going to be quite weak across the Gulf of Alaska, so lighter wind speeds there, a little bit of more of a southerly flow ahead of it. And then mainly just some lift along a trough axis extending into the northern channel. So that's going to be starting up a little bit later tonight and continuing through the day tomorrow. Across the northern and eastern areas of the state, it is going to be on the drier side. However, as we get into the Wednesday time frame, we'll see some strong gusty flow as this gradient becomes a little bit tighter packed across the western areas of the state. So expect wind speeds there between 30 to 50 miles per hour. So it's going to be very gusty and lots of snow, a little bit on the lighter side as you head towards Bristol Bay and the Kuskokwim Delta. And then we're going to see a mix of rain and snow across the eastern areas of the Bering. Here's the low pressure system. It is going to be closing off here at the surface on Wednesday, and that's what is helping to initiate the additional or heavier snow showers as we head through the day. Now we will see some light rain showers just off the coast. For the western areas of the Bering, yet another troughing system will be clipping the backside of this low pressure system, reinforcing the colder air mass and bring those snow showers back into the western waters there. Now looking at your Thursday weather, low pressure is going to be occluding here as it gets just south of the Bering Strait, and light snow showers are going to be encompassing the Bering with very strong gusty flow between 30 to 50 miles per hour. Very strong flow will probably also develop around the low pressure system in the Gulf as it gets kind of pulled back and reinforced here near the Kenai. And this is going to bring possibly some rain showers back into the southeastern areas. However, snow will linger across those northern channels. And we'll also see some light snow continuing across much of the central and southern parts of the state. Now to the north, we'll see an introduction of blowing snow as the gradient gets a little bit tighter with this low pressure system moving closer to the west coast. So here's your temperatures as we head into Wednesday morning. Expect very cold temperatures across the northern and central interior in the single digits or just below zero, with temperatures in the 20s across the western areas of the state and also along the northern Gulf. Across the southeast, also temperatures in the 20s for you. And then for the Bering, expect temperatures to range in the mid-30s across the Alaska Peninsula to the lower 30s out towards the western areas of the Aleutians. As we head into Wednesday afternoon, slight warming across the southwest. Well, that'll keep some temperature ranges in the lower 30s to the lower 40s through the Alaska Peninsula. However, the central interior will be around mid-20s, also the west coast. Northern tier of the state will warm up into the single digits or lower teens, and the southeast will be warming into the mid-30s to, well, actually lower to mid-30s for your day tomorrow. As we head into Thursday morning, expect temperatures to drop slightly across the south, staying in the upper 20s to lower 30s, and most of the Gulf coastal locations will be in the mid-20s. Interior areas will see temperatures in the single digits or just below zero, very similar temperatures Thursday morning, with temperatures across the west coast in the upper teens to lower 20s, which is slightly cooler than Wednesday morning. Now across the western peninsula, we'll see that dropping below freezing through the Aleutian chain. So temperatures across the Bering on this day will be below 30 degrees essentially. Alaska Peninsula through the western Gulf will be that transitional, hovering near 32-degree range. So mix of precip there for your Thursday morning.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Now on to the aviation section of the show. We're going to talk about aviation across the interior areas, which for the most part, we're going to see IFR conditions extending from north of the Brooks Range all the way down through the southwest to start your Wednesday morning off. And looking at these conditions to extend pretty much across the Bering and Aleutian chain. Only along the eastern border will there be some breaks in these conditions along the eastern Brooks Range there and along the eastern Alaska Range. The southeast should be IFR to MVFR conditions also to start the morning, and MVFR conditions across much of the Gulf. Now, as we head into the afternoon, conditions will improve across much of the state. We'll see IFR conditions, however, continue across the southeast as we have low pressure bring some snow showers across that area. Now, the southwest will also have another system that's going to be bringing some snow, so reducing visibilities into IFR categories for the all the way down through the southwest to the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. Out there to the west, slightly improved conditions there for the western Bering. And then as we head into your Thursday morning, expect widespread MVFR conditions for the western half of the Bering and a little break there of VFR conditions for Thursday morning. And then we'll see also widespread IFR conditions for much of the state again to start off the day, with the southeast also in the IFR category and widespread MVFR to IFR conditions across all of the Gulf. As we head into the afternoon hours, yet another system will be bringing snow across the south central locations down through the central areas of the Gulf. And we're going to see ongoing conditions to IFR to MVFR for the southeast. Now across the northern tier of the state, MVFR conditions as well as IFR, especially along the Brooks Range there and along the southwest coast. That's going to be expanding out through much of the Bering and then widespread MVFR conditions. The only area that should see some improvement during the afternoon will be around the Kodiak Island and Bristol Bay and maybe perhaps the eastern areas of the Alaska Peninsula. Now let's take a look at your passes in more depth. We'll start with Anaktuvik, which will be IFR category all day, as well as Adigan Pass, and we'll see Lake Clark and Merrill Pass go from IFR to MVFR conditions during the afternoon. For Rainy Pass, expect IFR going to VFR, and we'll see Windy go from IFR to MVFR. For Isabel, expect IFR to MVFR, and Mentasta will be IFR to MVFR. Tanita Pass will be IFR to VFR, and Portage will be IFR to VFR. And lastly, Chilkoot and White Pass will stay IFR all day. Now, your freezing levels to start tomorrow morning will be draped across the northern areas of the Bering and then hugging along the Gulf Coast. Now, we'll see a rise in heights just south of the Dixon entrance there, 2,000 to 4,000 feet. The best height rises are going to be across the Bering, where we're going to start at 2,000 feet, increasing to 8,000 feet just before you get to the central and eastern Aleutians there. Now let's take a look at your icing for tomorrow. Well, this map is widely covered as we have several fronts moving across the area. So that's going to put all areas in some type of icing issue for your day on Wednesday. If we look at the jet stream, the strongest area of the jet is out here to the west, 140 knot jet, more of a westerly flow pushing into the southwest coast, and that's what's driving the fronts that are coming across from the Bering. And then we have this ongoing troughing just south of the Gulf. So this system is actually becoming a little bit more amplified, and therefore what we're seeing for your Wednesday is low pressure in the Gulf beginning to form, and this is got a little bit stronger flow on the backside of it, between 40 to 50 knots, becoming more of a southeasterly flow up to the Panhandle at 25 knots. Lighter flow across the eastern areas of the state between 10 to 20 knots, and a stronger flow across the southwest there between 30 to 60 knots along the coast, and a strong zonal flow between 70 to 80 knots across the Bering. And very similar pattern at the 3,000 foot level here. We'll see that change of direction around the low pressure system, 20 to 35 knots across the Gulf waters. Lighter flow inland out of the south, 10 to 25 knots there, and then the strongest flow that is out there across the Bering, mainly a zonal flow between 40 to 50 knots, and stronger through the Strait, 25 to 45 knots. To sum up, the concerns for tomorrow are going to be around the low pressure system that's surrounding the Bering, with possible directional flow issues maybe along the Bristol Bay area, but mainly we're going to be seeing speed shear.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. As you well know, you can get forecast information for any day of the week. Today, tonight, tomorrow, out to 6 or 7 days. It includes the high and low temperature, the wind direction, the chance of rain or snow in your part of Alaska. But did you know that there is information available to forecast out to 2 weeks? So the question is, how would you use that information? And here to answer that question today and tell us a lot more about climate services from the U.S. National Weather Service Alaska region is Rick Toman. He's the program manager for the Climate Science and Services. And Rick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
How would we use information that is out to 2 weeks instead of just the high and low and the chance of rain?
Well, Dave, as we move out in time, of course, forecasts become more uncertain. So as we move into that second week from now, we're not looking at specific highs or lows or precipitation amounts at any given place. What we can do with the state of the science at this point is get a handle on patterns. So we can say things like increased chances for stormy weather in the Bering Sea in 2 weeks, or we've been in a cold weather pattern, looks like 8 to 10 days from now, that pattern's going to change. Those are the kind of forecasts that we can currently make in that second week.
So you're increasing lead time for perhaps big or small weather events and telling us the likelihood of maybe more coastal storms or wind events in some areas?
Those are the kinds of things that that we hope to be able to let Alaskans know in the second week forecast. And if you have an activity or an event that you would find that kind of advance notice useful, whether it's moving stuff off of the beach, whether to go out hunting or to come back from camp, those kind of decisions, the week 2 provides the opportunity for you to get a handle on that kind of information.
Okay. What other type of weather impacts that we're familiar with might Alaskans use climate services for?
Well, in the forecast realm, we can go provide some information from this week 2, say the 8 to 14 day period, on out to the monthly and even seasonal time scale. Now, those monthly seasonal forecasts are still kind of just really very much pattern dependent, and the amount of detail that we can provide at this point is still pretty limited. Generally, indications of how temperature and precipitation will fall in maybe above normal, below normal kind of range. But in the week 2 period, we can be considerably more specific than that as far as the general patterns and really the impacts on Alaskans.
Okay, so we would be talking about generalizations there that would tell us that the period might be more stormy, might be more hot, more dry, more cold, and situations like that.
That's correct. So we're not going to be able to say in which community, for instance, there's the threat of coastal flooding, but we can often be able to tell we're moving into a pattern that would be conducive to big Bering Sea storms. So if you're in an area that could potentially impact you, you'll want to pay attention to the weather forecast.
Okay. Now, every day and every hour of the day, the National Weather Service is working on a forecast for the next day. But how do you start your forecast process for that extended period that goes out beyond 7 days?
Well, the way things work right now, we start off with the expected general flow pattern for Alaska and the whole world, really, and then we narrow that down to Alaska. So we start off with the basic computer model forecast. There's quite a few different computer models that we look at, bring those together. And then another important part of that is we attempt to assess the confidence. The reality is often 2 weeks away, the computer models are very divergent. They have lots of different solutions, and that's an indication that we don't have much confidence. But when we see more agreement in that time frame, and when that agreement is a pattern that will be potentially very impactful for Alaska or is a big change from what we've been in, that's when we can then take that expected pattern. We have computer models forecasting it. We've assessed the confidence. Now we can move that forward. How, using our experience as Alaskan weather forecasters, how does that typically play out for Alaska? So is this a stormy pattern for the Bering Sea? Is this an extra rainy period for Southeast? Is this the kind of pattern that generates strong winds potentially in the Anchorage Bowl? Is this a deep cold pattern for the interior? All of those are the kind of things that we're looking at in these large-scale patterns. That's very different than telling you that the winds on 10 days from now are going to be gusting to 120 on the hillside. We're looking for patterns, not the very specific information that the Weather Service will then hone in on as the event gets closer.
So the idea is to keep the 5, 6, 7 day forecast the same, where you are getting the standard high and low temperature and the chance of wind or rain, but further out you get a broad general forecast, but as the time gets closer to that event, we'll get a lot more specific.
That's correct.
Okay, Very good. So how can people use this information if I am out in the bush and I want to see, is a coastal storm expected in my region, or is a chance for that improving over the next 2 to 3 weeks? Where could I go to get information like that?
When we see that potentially impactful or a big change in the weather is coming 8 to 14 days out, typically we will start to highlight that on the Weather Service Facebook site. We might produce a YouTube video highlighting that, linking that on our Facebook site. So often we don't, at this point, we don't have much to say in that because we're really looking for those forecasts of opportunities. But one thing we can say very likely as we go through the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be more and more of this kind of forecast information available in that week 2 time frame.
Okay, and something that emergency managers and city planners and folks in villages might be interested in keeping an eye out for, looking for that information to be headlined, whether that's on social media or perhaps through the National Weather Service channels there to get information from you to make better plans a little bit longer term and make better preparations in the event that things become a little bit more unsettled.
Absolutely. Climate Services with the National Weather Service Alaska region is talking to the state of Alaska every week, apprising them of that 2-week outlook. And on the social media side, we are working to keep Alaskans informed so that when we think we have some confidence in a high impact or a big change, that's the best way right now for folks to find out about that. Twitter, Facebook, so stay tuned to your National Weather Service.
Very good, a developing program. Rick Thoman with the National Weather Service Alaska region. He's a Climate Science and Services Program Manager. Thanks so much for joining us again, Rick, and I hope to have you back again soon.
Great, thanks Dave.
For another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And now we're on to the marine section of the show, and we're going to cover the ice edge to start you off. Along the west coast, we're going to be seeing some very strong southerly flow through the next few days, so we're expecting conditions to actually erode the ice edge. We have this opening here just north of St. Lawrence Island, and that's going to continue to diminish along the ice edge within the next few days. Now let's take a look at the southeast forecast for your Wednesday. Mainly a southerly flow across the area with inner channels seeing seas between 2 to 3 feet, and the outer waters will be mainly between 5 to 6 feet. And as we head into your Thursday forecast, a little bit change of wind direction across the northern channels there out of the north at 20 knots, and seas on this day across the inner channels will be 3 to 5 feet, and the outer waters will be around 7 foot. And as we head over to the Wednesday time frame for the northern and western areas of the Gulf, we're expecting more of a northerly flow, becoming more northwesterly across the western Gulf waters there. And seas on this day are going to range around 3 to 5 feet, with the higher seas, of course, across the northern and western Gulf. On Thursday, expect stronger winds with gales coming into the forecast here across the northeastern Gulf and into the Prince William Sound, looking at 35 to 40 knots there, and then a northerly flow across the Cook Inlet towards the southern tip of the Kenai, and we'll see more of a southerly wind across the eastern Kenai, small craft advisories there. Now we'll see seas across the Gulf waters between 9 to 10 feet, along the inlet around 6 feet. Let's take a look at the Alaska Peninsula, more of a southwesterly to westerly flow. Small crafts towards the west of Kodiak Island there in Bristol Bay, and we'll see seas on this day between 8 to 13 feet across the Bering side and between 6 to 9 feet across the Pacific side. Looking at your Thursday forecast, strong westerly flow, gale force criteria there, and we'll see seas increasing between 10 to 20 foot across the Bering, and then between 15 to 17 feet across the North Pacific. Along the Aleutian chain, expect a change of wind direction from west to southwesterly along the chain, and they're going to be mostly small craft, but gales out towards Shemya, and seas on this day will range between 10 to 20 feet, and the seas are going to be highest out towards Shemya. On your Thursday forecast, expect much stronger winds coming in across the area, all gales for the Aleutian chain with a west to northwesterly direction, and seas on this day are going to be much higher, between 20 to 30 feet on the Bering side and 20 to 26 feet on the Pacific side. Looking at your west coast forecast on Wednesday, stronger flow towards the northern areas of the Bering there, and we're going to see primarily between 30 to 40 knots on your Wednesday in the southwesterly direction, and then we'll see more of a southerly flow up towards the Bering Strait there, becoming more north on Thursday. So expect a pattern change in the wind direction for your Thursday forecast. Seas on this day in ice-free waters will range between 10 to 20 feet, and then slightly higher towards the Pribilofs, around 25 feet. For your north coast, expect a east to northeasterly flow around much of the northwest, except becoming more of a southwesterly as you pass through the Bering Strait. And we'll see small craft advisories or brisk wind across or around the Seward Peninsula, blowing snow conditions there as well. And on Thursday, expect more of a easterly direction for most of the area, becoming north through the Bering Strait, gales for the Bering Strait there. And then let's recap your forecast very quickly. We're going to see some winter storm warnings for snow across the western areas of the state, starting during the late night hours tonight, bringing snow totals between 5 to 8 inches, with higher amounts isolated between 12 to 16 inches. Also, snow will develop at much lighter across the Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay, and South Central, following with a weak trough and strong westerly flow across the Bering. Now the southeast can look for some snow increasing during the late overnight hours through Wednesday. Snow totals out there will be on average 4 to 8 inches. Stay updated on your forecast because there are going to be isolated higher amounts. Now this low pressure system is going to continue to bring the snow for the southeast and the west coast as we head through your Wednesday and your weather into Thursday. We're going to wrap up this snow system by bringing this low pressure into the southwestern areas. So a very busy snow forecast as we head towards the end of the week.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.